Welcome to this week's episode of Rookie Roulette, where we're covering Dalton Knecht. I am your host, Tyler Metcalf, and later in just a few minutes, I'll be joined by Sean Davis, who, just another fantastic interview, provided a ton of insight on Knecht, on where Knecht has, kind of found success, where he struggled, and then we kind of dove into the Dorian Finney-Smith trade and how that can change. The kind of outlook and operation for not only the Lakers, but also kind of how it can help elevate Connect and continue to get the best out of him. Before we dive into my interview, I just want to run through some kind of numbers at the open here to just kind of highlight where Connect has been throughout the season, starting from draft night all the way up to today. So Dalton Knecht was the 17th pick for the Los Angeles Lakers on the No Ceilings Collective Big Board. He ended up at 7 overall for us, and he was also 7th on my final board as well. When we look at synergy, the scoring numbers with Connect have been incredibly efficient and incredibly encouraging. He's in the 87th percentile overall in points per possession, 83rd percentile spotting up, 86 on handoffs, 94th as a pick and roll ball handler, and 89th on cuts. So there's a ton of kind of versatility in his play finishing. When we look at the assist rate and turnover rate, they're both astronomically low. So, he's not much of a passer, but when he does, he's at least not turning it over. So, there's a little push and pull there with his playmaking. But as a second side creator and second side scorer, there's a lot more that can continue to be unlocked, like we saw at Tennessee and Northern Colorado, where there's a lot of on-ball stuff to his game too, and he just hasn't been able to be put in position to totally unlock it. Sean does a really good job of kind of touching on how we could see his offense grow going forward. But even kind of diving further into his scoring, he's in the 79th percentile at the rim per synergy, 72nd percentile on all jumpers. Weirdly, 48th percentile off the catch. And a lot of that is because he's kind of struggling when they're running him off screens. And his movement three hasn't totally been there. I believe he's sub 30% on that this year, where last year at Tennessee, he was in the high 30s. So a bit of a learning curve there, a bit of an adjustment, but something that we have a pretty good track record of him thriving in, but also 94th percentile in shooting off the bounce. So there's, as a second side creator, second side scorer, there's continuing to be more and more signs that there's a lot more of that that Connect can unlock. When we go over to cleaning the glass, where they remove all of the kind of garbage time and last second heaves and all that kind of stuff, the numbers are still fantastic. He's in the 87th percentile in effective field goal rate, 94th percentile in at rim field goal percentage, and 70th percentile from three. The Lakers' offensive rating is 5.2 higher when he's on the court than when he's off. That differential ranks in the 82nd percentile. Unfortunately, there's two sides to that coin, where their defensive rating is also 6.0 higher when he's on the court than when he's off, and that differential is in the 15th percentile. Connect has never been a good defender, but he was always kind of a good enough athlete where he was big enough, strong enough, where he could at least hold his own. And last year at Tennessee, he had a block rate of about 2.4 and a steal rate of about 1.8. Not elite numbers, not great numbers, but kind of good enough. And unfortunately, he hasn't been able to translate any defensive playmaking or really consistency or competence at this point to the NBA and to the Lakers. So far, his block rate is at just 0.1 and his steal rate is at 0.8. His four most common lineups have a net rating of -17, -11.1, -19, and -33.8. And the big reason for that is that all of those defensive ratings for his four most common lineups are over 120. The defense has been a real struggle, especially of late for the Lakers, and Connect has unfortunately been a big reason why. Now, again, Sean touches on this and how Dorian Finney-Smith can hopefully help simplify things for him and the Lakers on that end of the floor. But the big selling point with Knecht coming out of school was his offense. And so far, that has translated seamlessly. His off ball scoring, his off ball play finishing has been really, really fantastic. And they've barely scratched the surface of what he can do as an on ball creator. So now that D'Angelo Russell is being shipped off to Brooklyn, maybe we'll see a little more of that. In terms of Knecht being able to create not as the primary guy, but as a second side guy, a little more two-man game action, a little more second side pick and roll stuff. So the offense with Knecht has been fantastic. If they're able to continue to insulate him a little more, we at least have a track record of Knecht being okay enough. I know there are a lot of hedging there. But if he can just kind of simplify his responsibilities, slow down the game mentally a little bit, and better utilize his size and his strength and his athleticism, there's at least room to improve on the defensive end. Before we dive into my interview with Sean, gotta pull up the wheel, figure out who we're talking about next week. So we're gonna bring up the wheel right now, give it a spin, and we are landing on, oh boy, this may be a spicy one for next week. Rookie for the Detroit Pistons. That'll be really fun. Holland has had kind of a roller coaster of a year. And I'm really excited to talk to our guest next week about it. But until then, let's jump over to my interview with Sean Davis. Thrilled to welcome on this week's guest to talk with me about Dalton Knecht and the rest of the Los Angeles Lakers, who, as usual, are inserting themselves in the news stream. Sean Davis joins the show. Sean, how's it going? Thank you for taking the time.
It's going good, Tyler. Thanks for having me on. I'm really excited to talk about this one with you. Appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, I'm thrilled to have you on. I appreciate you taking the time. Before we dive into Dalton Knecht and his season and the rest of the Lakers season so far, where can everyone kind of follow you, support you, and kind of catch all the good work you're doing?
Yeah, so you guys can follow me on Twitter at Sean_DAVI. Unfortunately, Davis was taken, so the worst. And you guys can go check out the Sports Headlines podcast for like more NBA content as a whole, and then Los Angeles Lakers Network YouTube channel for a straight like Lakers specific stuff.
Love it. Go support Sean. He does awesome work. All right, Sean. Dalton Knecht, really kind of polarizing rookie year so far. But he was an older prospect coming out of Tennessee at Northern Colorado before he transferred up. Was kind of the end all be all of Tennessee's offense, was regularly dropping 30 points in the SEC. One of the kind of more dominant college scoring seasons, especially from a perimeter player that we've seen in recent years. When he fell to the 17th pick for the Lakers, what was your just kind of initial reaction on draft night when the pick was made?
It was honestly relief because I thought they weren't going to take him. I thought we were going to do the same thing 2 years in a row because the Jalen Hood-Schifino year, I really wanted Cam Whitmore. I had him like 6th on my board that year.
Yeah.
And then I had Dalton 10 if you account for injuries because of Topage. So I was relief that that they actually took him. But then once the relief settled, I was like, yeah, this is like one of the steals of the draft. Like you already said, one of the more dominant scoring seasons from a perimeter player that we've seen in recent memory. I thought, did he get enough credit for like how sneaky athletic he was? And that's why I don't know about I don't know what your comp for him was, but I never really found a good comp for Dalton because my very first one, which I hated immediately, was like Max Strus. I was like, no, that's not it. And I just like never really found a good one, but yeah, I love the pick after like the relief settled, honestly.
Yeah, he was really tricky. Just because what he was at Tennessee compared to like what he projected to be in the NBA is like, and he's not going to be a 35 usage guy dropping, asked to create everything and score everything and be this really dynamic physical 3-level scorer. And he played a little DeRozan-esque with his physicality and stuff at Tennessee, but I mean, he was it would have been shocking if he came in as a rookie and had that type of usage. But he's kind of from day one been used what we kind of thought he would be as this like really dynamic off-ball shooter and scorer. So just kind of how has your impression of him, expectations of him, um, shifted or changed or evolved in this early part of the season from draft night and kind of what you saw from him at Tennessee?
Yeah, I think some Laker fans have kind of not soured on him because of his recent play, but I think they've kind of like their thoughts have maybe waned a little bit more on him because of the month of December, where like you have the month of November where he averaged like 14 points on 51, 46, 83. And the three was falling. He took 6 attempts a game. And in the month of December, he hasn't shot the ball well at all. His 3-point volume's actually been cut in half essentially for the month of December. And I think it's a couple things with that. One, I think teams are playing him a little bit more tightly than they have in recent, like in November and the beginning of the year. And the two, the Lakers offense as a whole has just been really, really bad for the past month. They've flipped courses, and at the start of the season, they couldn't guard anybody, but they were scoring in the 120s. And now it's kind of the opposite, where they've been like a top 12 maybe defense, I think, for the past 15 games or so. Maybe it's a little bit worse than that, but they've been a bottom 10 offense for essentially the entire month of December. But better personnel, I think DFS actually going to help with, like, they'll use him as a screener a little bit. And Dalton the past 2 games just play with more confidence they did through that slump, like playing off the catch and being able to be dynamic and know that I can still get to the rim like when I want to, especially attacking like the 4th best team defender most nights instead of being the best defender when he was at Tennessee. So I mean, I think he's for the most part met my expectations. The slump maybe affected some people's thoughts of him, but it's about what I've expected. He's at like 10 points per game on 37% from 3. Like, you told me that coming into the year, I said, yeah, heck yeah, that's about right.
Especially early on in the season, with sample size and all that kind of stuff. But it gets even a little trickier with rookies because it's like, all right, well, welcome to the show. Like, it's very different levels of competition. You mentioned how the kind of difference between the November splits and the December splits. Do you think that's anything more than just him kind of maybe hitting an early season rookie wall and maybe being elevated on the opposing team's scouting report, or are there bigger red flags or any concerns for you there?
I think it's more so just that, and I think the Lakers can do a better job of like getting him more touches, and even if it's not like designed 3-point looks, but like letting him play some more 2-man game with AD, like, or like a empty side handoff or whatever. So I think it's just continuing to keep him involved. I think he did hit a rookie wall, but I think these last 2 games, especially the way he played on Christmas Day in that kind of environment against Golden State, I think is really just he hit the rookie wall. Some stuff schematically didn't really pan out for him, and just as the team, they stopped playing offense. And he's played really well the past 2 games, and I think he's going to project forward after that.
In terms of kind of usage and his role, guys of his archetype typically get pegged as, oh, he's just a spot up shooter. He's a lethal, off ball shooter. But we saw throughout his entire college career, and especially at Tennessee, that he has way more kind of movement scoring and on ball creation ability and 2-man game stuff in his arsenal. And when
Mm-hmm.
we look at, his kind of play type distribution on Synergy, the bulk of it
Mm-hmm.
is like transition spotting up and off screens. But then
Mm-hmm.
you look at him on like DHOs and as a pick and roll ball handler, he's in the 86th percentile on handoffs, the 94th percentile as a pick and roll ball handler. Obviously, all of that is mostly second side stuff, but the frequency of those play types is a lot lower. Um, do you think that there's a lot more room for him to kind of unlock in those types of situations and really continue to elevate this Lakers offense, especially now that one of their primary creators and
Yep.
D'Angelo Russell is gone? Do you see that being kind of a route for him and the Lakers to pursue in these next couple weeks, months, or do you think it's just one of those, hey, in very limited scope, he can be incredibly efficient?
Yeah, that's what I'm hoping for, Tyler, that they experiment a little bit more with some of the creation stuff off of handoffs or off of like 2-minute game stuff in general. I think another thing that, if you only look at the regular season, like play type stuff for Dalton, that is something to like consider when we look at his efficiency. And I'm not even really concerned about it. The off-screen stuff hasn't been there for him this year from three. Like he's shooting 23% on off-screen threes, where last year at Tennessee it was like 37 or maybe like a touch under 37%. So, and that is still at the end of the day the bulk of the stuff that they run for him. But now there's no D'Angelo Russell to like help one like Austin get a little bit of a break, and Braun at the same time. Like I said, going like some of those like think like the idealized version for like Dalton Knecht this year would be like how Miami kind of used Duncan and Bam, where like their 2-minute game stuff. But imagine that, but a more athletic version and a guy that I think is just showing more on-ball chops than Duncan Robinson ever did. And Duncan Robinson, like last year specifically, like took a leap offensively. But like that's kind of like the actualized version, I think, of Dalton Knecht year one, where we're still going to run our off-screen stuff for you. We're still going to let you play in transition, play off the catch. But now no D'Lo. Okay, here we'll throw you 3 extra on ball reps a game and let you play 2-man game with AD a little bit more, or Braun even a little bit more. So yeah, I really do hope that's where they go.
And when you just look at the numbers, the turnover rate is low, which is awesome. But then you also look at like the assist rate and assist numbers, and those are also extremely low. So it's like, oh, okay, yeah. So they are really just using him kind of as that play finisher. Have you seen enough in terms of flashes and stuff with the passing that that makes you feel even more confident in that kind of 2-man game stuff, that second side creator stuff outside of just his kind of strength, athleticism, and scoring ability?
Not really. That's not even really me knocking him. I think that's more just like opportunity this year. And I'm kind of projecting going based off like what we knew from him at Tennessee, where I thought, and that's why again I hated the Max Strus comp immediately. Was like, no, he's more athletic and he like can actually like play a little bit more and be like that second side creator, like you mentioned. I think in the very, very limited chances he's gotten, I think he's been fine. There's been some growing pains, but like you said, like the turnover rate is so low. I mean, but the assist rate too is also really, really low because he just doesn't get those reps. So, and I also think like long term, we're talking about his potential and his ceiling. I think you do want to start to give him some of those reps now. I mean, I think you look at a guy like a Max Christie for an example. Like imagine Max getting the reps he got now last year. So like jump the gun with Dalton now, give him some of these extra reps so that, year 3, year 4, you got a, full package that maybe resembles a little bit of what he was at Tennessee. Not the insanely high usage rate part, but, the 3-level scoring, the second side playmaking, and now you have a really, really good player on your hands.
And I think that's the just getting reps early on. I know he's an older prospect where, Christie was a one and done, but it's still an adjustment, and just getting those early reps is so important. And, in terms of playmaking, he doesn't need to be running the show, but can you just run that effective 2-man game where on a handoff, both defenders go with you and you deliver a nice little pocket pass or, that kind of stuff. Like you mentioned with the Duncan and Bam DHO 2-man game, which is really fun. And I think Dalton has a lot of the kind of feel, obviously the shooting ability and off-ball movement where they can elevate into those kind of similar, at least create a facsimile of it in some sort of sense. All right. Spinning a little negative here. What has kind of concerned you the most about Dalton in terms of what you've seen from him early on this season and how that may project going forward? If there are any kind of like red flags, or is like, ooh, this could be a real problem, or is it just like, not great right now, but I think he can improve?
I think we're just eventually getting to the point where it's like, Dalton might just be a bad defender. Because I feel like everybody's hope was, going from Northern Colorado, right? Yeah, Northern Colorado to Tennessee was, oh, hey, all right, now he's not the guy, and hopefully be able to see him scale back and lock in a little bit more defensively. And it was the exact opposite. His offensive role increased by a lot, and insanely high usage rate. And we kind of did the same thing with him entering the draft. Well, okay, look, he's not gonna have that insanely high usage rate anymore. He's going to be playing next to, multiple guys that create, regardless of the situation. We didn't know BLA, but okay, he's a smart defender, maybe not the most fluid at times, but he's smart. He competes defensively, whatever. And he gets to the spot where he should literally never have, or not have to create at all, or at the time at least. And he's just been a really, really bad defender. So I'm kind of at the point now where I just think he's a bad defender. Maybe you can get to like a neutral level defender or a slightly below average defender at some point, but that's easily the biggest red flag right now is that, okay, yeah, he just hasn't translated defensively. And it's something I expect him to be like better at day one. I thought he would be better at like playing in the passing lanes, which I think he was, fine at Tennessee, or, being a good helper off the ball. I mean, he's not been good at that when they've utilized him in that role. When they've had him like chasing a little bit more off ball, like chasing off ball stuff, I think he's been fine. It's probably been where he's been at his best so far this season. But that's easily probably like the biggest red flag is, yeah, he's just probably a bad defender.
Yeah, that unfortunately that kind of pops in the numbers on tape.
Yeah.
However you kind of spin it, it's like, man, there's just nothing really pointing to success on that end of the floor, unfortunately. And I was in the same boat as kind of you and so many others, where it's like, okay, man, he had to do everything for that Tennessee offense, and all he was saying all the right things. Where it's like, yeah, he transferred to Tennessee because he wanted to learn how to defend, he wanted to be held accountable, he wanted to improve on that end, and he kind of did at Tennessee. Whereas like, like it's bad, but it's not like horrendous like it used to be. And
Right.
he had the size and the strength and the athleticism to at least kind of hold his own. And even like some of the defensive playmaking metrics, like the block rate was at like 2.5, the steal rate was just under 2. Not great, but good enough. And now this year, like block rate's down to 0.1 and steal rate at 0.8. It's like, oh man, like you're not even doing that.
Yeah.
In terms of like not even producing anything in terms of defensive playmaking, is that more of him just really struggling, like with screens and athleticism and the pace of play, or just kind of how they're using him and him not really being in position to impact the game in those types of ways?
I think it's like a positioning thing defensively.
Okay.
And I do want to give him some benefit of the doubt because the first, I don't know, month and a half, 2 months of the season, like basically to like the last 2 or 3 weeks or so, the Lakers have been switching everything, which for God knows what reason. Like, this is not the team to switch 1 through 5 with. I mean, one, because that you just eliminate what AD is elite at, number one.
Right.
And then number two, like no Vando the whole year, and you don't have any other like functional size. You're like, why is Austin Reeves our D'Lo or Dalton guarding, on ball reps against like Shea, or that's the first guy that pops into my head. So I'm gonna like chalk it up as that. I think as a team they've been a lot better when they've been a little bit more drop based these past few weeks. So I'm hoping, like, I have like some b-ball index numbers right quick this season. Dalton Knecht is a help defender, like help defense talent, which I don't know how they identify. Help defense talent is a value capturing help defensive talent that factors in activity and effectiveness. So basically, how effective are you when you're required to help, and like how like active, I guess. I mean, I'm sorry.
I'm sure there's some ground coverage metrics and stuff that they factor in. Yeah.
Grades out as a F, 10th percentile.
Yikes.
Help effectiveness rating, 27th percentile, D grade. Like, he just has been a good helper, and that's unfortunately where they've deployed him the most. Now, like I said, when they've asked him to like chase off ball a little bit more or things of that nature, he's been a little bit better at that. So it's just finding like the nice, sweet spot for Dalton Knecht defensively, which is probably just as an off-ball chaser, and they let these other guys like Max, guard the point of attack. DFS now as a wing stopper. Like, I think hopefully they settle in and find a nice role for him defensively, because they'll need him now for sure.
And just with his size and athleticism, I do think there's so much more that he could contribute on that end, but it's, at this point, it's all theoretical. Going back more positive, just kind of what's impressed you the most or gotten you the most excited about his future in this kind of early portion of his career?
I don't think the numbers are going to reflect this, but he's such a good rebounder, especially like on the offensive list. He's such a good rebounder. And then I think in the limited opportunities we have seen, and he grades out really, really well, like with the analytics in terms of his self-created stuff, like in one-on-one scenarios, like those are the two things. I think we knew he would come in and be a really, really good shooter, could play in the open floor really, really well. But and I think he was a pretty good rebounder, all things considered at Tennessee. But
yeah,
how good he's been as an offensive rebounder, where he's had the chance to be, and two, like how well he is played in like one-on-one scenarios where it's, hey, it's 7 on the clock, Braun kicked it out to you. All right, let's play with the second side action or whatever, and let's create a good look. I think he's done that pretty well, especially here recently.
and finding those guys that you can just throw a grenade to late in the
Yeah.
shot clock and be like, hey, get something.
Yeah.
And those guys are really hard to find, and have kind of already seen that as a rookie. Like that's huge, especially for this team that's kind of had real ups and downs in terms of reliable scores.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of heights do you think that role for him could grow into? Like 6-man potential starter, or just how much do you think his offense can kind of carry him going forward?
I think the vision probably has to be not Max Dalton probably being a long-term starter.
Okay.
Like maybe as early as next year, depending on like what the roster looks like, if they're able to get more two-way talent around these guys. It depends though, because it kind of depends on how you view Max. Like if you view Max as a 2-3, okay, then maybe you can fit those two guys together. Or if you think he's just like a 2, then it maybe makes things a little bit differently, and kind of vice versa. But I think if with the increase in opportunity, I think he's a good enough offensive player to warrant starting him.
Okay.
And like I say, you get more two-way pieces on the roster. Like you got DFS already. You could put lineups together to where, let's say he's a D+ defender. I think you could put two-way talent around him enough to where you're like, okay, cool. Like he's our starter. He can get 16 a night pretty easily because of the shot, the gravity that's going to come from it, and then his ability to play in space and in transition, and also create on like the second side stuff.
Okay. Let's talk about the Dorian Finney-Smith trade. Real quick, we can go however deep or long you want to on it. If you have any burning thoughts that you haven't shared elsewhere. But just for overview, Nets got D'Angelo Russell, Maxwell Lewis, and 3 of the Lakers' own second round picks. I believe it is like 2027, 2030, and 31. Lakers got Dorian Finney-Smith and Shake Milton. What was just kind of your initial reaction to the trade and what this means for the Lakers?
I think one, this just reasserts their belief even more in Austin Reeves. Like you don't trade D'Lo for DFS. Probably trade like a Gabe and other salary to try to get DFS if you can. But them trading D'Lo, which is their only other like non-Braun facilitator or on ball creator for the offense, he's the only other guy that they really entrusted with that. Trading him for DFS just really like goes to show like, no, they believe in Austin as at least the one for now. Whether he's the long-term one is to be determined. And in Austin, the past 2 games has did a great job facilitating and getting paint touches that JJ Redick has talked about a ton, and being able to collapse the defense. So that was my initial thought, that they love Austin. This kind of reasserts their belief in him even more as the long-term or as the short-term one at the very least. And then the second thing was really not even about DFS, was more the fact that you got a playoff caliber player without giving up any of your first round picks to do so, which is big because now you still have tradable salaries available, and you still have 2 first and then 2 first round swaps that you can use to try to, be still a player on the market come February 6th or before then. So those are the 2 very like initial thoughts. Was one, okay, yeah, they believe in Austin a lot, and you could even argue maybe a bit too much, because now I'm saying, all right, cool. I still like the trade. I like the trade, but now my immediate thought is, let's go get another guard in here somehow that can carry some of the torch for Austin and like give him some burn and give Braun some burn in an 82 game stretch. And then like you getting a legit playoff player that can play both ends of the floor without having to give up any of your first, and you gave up a guy that you're probably not bringing back next year anyway. So those are my very two like initial reactions.
Okay, I think the asset, and I hate how much of the NBA world is now asset management. But that's important. It's really crucial for what they're going to do. I'll put that on hold just for 1 second because I just want to stick on DFS specifically and just what specifically you think he'll change, both kind of good and bad, in terms of what the Lakers are losing with the trade, and but more importantly, also what they're kind of gaining, because he's a really good defender, knockdown shooter, in terms of like spot up situations, versatile defender, but not necessarily like a big time point of attack guy. More of like a really well rounded team defender, off ball defender, really good on wings, all of that kind of stuff. So, in terms of both good and bad, how does he specifically kind of shift the structure and the mechanics of this Lakers rotation?
Yeah, I think for starters, I don't think he starts. Definitely not day one. I think they also really love Rui Hachimura. I know Laker fans, there's a good chunk of them that want Rui gone. I would be shocked if Rui gets traded,
Okay.
unless they were to pull off some like Zach LaVine deal. That's the first guy that popped in my head. Where you absolutely need the salary to somehow get to, to match Zach's. I don't see them trading Rui based off everything we've heard all season, going back to the offseason. Rui was on the guys that they talked about as one of their building blocks going forward or something like that. I'm paraphrasing. I'm sure they used a different word than that. But so I don't think DFS starts, but I think DFS bringing him in and swapping out D'Lo, I think it makes your roles defensively, like it makes it a lot. It makes more sense now. And especially because I think, like you say, he's not a point of attack defender, and you don't need him to be either, because I think Max has taken a leap over the past month or so, like the year 3 leap I think Laker fans really wanted. And he's played really well at the point of attack. So now you're bringing DFS in and you're saying, look, be the wing stopper. Like you're a guy to I always think of the Clippers. Like we faced Kawhi Leonard. All right, you got Kawhi. Like we're not throwing Rui on him. We're not throwing Braun on him. It's UDFS. We'll throw Max at the point of attack. We'll let Braun roam off ball a little bit. 80s Anthony Davis. We don't have to worry about him, and check ball a little bit, right? So I think it just balances out your defense a little bit more to where you have your legit point of attack guy. The thing that was missing, especially because Vando's been injured the entire year, is like a real wing stopper that could check your Tatums or your Kawhis and things of that nature, but also a really good help defender, like you said, away from the ball. And then now you kind of just let Vando, when he does eventually get back healthy, you kind of let him just say, look, go wreak havoc and be one of the best ball deniers in the league, and go be the interception artist for us. Let Max and DFS be Revis Island. You go get 15 picks for us. And then we have 80 behind you. So I think this gives your defense a higher ceiling and a higher floor, because now you have a really good help defender, a really good wing stopper, like you mentioned, and then offensively, just like make catch and shoot threes. I don't need anything else from you except stand in the corner and make catch and shoot threes.
And then just kind of having that circle back to Connect, how much do you think just that extra infusion of team defense, defensive versatility can kind of help insulate his shortcomings early on the season and potentially continue to unlock more in Connect's game? On both ends of the floor.
Yeah, like I said, like them using Dalton as a help defender, I don't think that's necessary now.
Yeah.
Because now, like I said, like utilize him more as your off-ball chaser, if you will.
Just kind of simplify his responsibilities. Be like, hey, you're guarding him.
Yeah, you're facing the I can't even think of a good team. You're facing X team. Look, you're guarding their off-ball guys. You're guarding their off-ball guys that might come off of screens here and there. But if you do have to guard in space, we're good. You have DFS, you have AD, you have Braun behind you. We're good. And then offensively, like they use DFS in some really interesting ways in Brooklyn as like a dribble handoff hub, as a screener, off ball at times even. So like having and he is a good screener. So utilizing him in some off ball actions with Dalton can help free Dalton open a little bit more too. Because Lakers screening from everybody not named Anthony Davis is really bad. So I think DFS is going to be able to help make Dalton's life, I think, actually a little bit simpler on both ends of the floor.
They did keep, like you mentioned, they did keep a lot of flexibility with first round draft picks and kind of roster stuff or salary stuff going forward. So it feels like there's another move out there for them to
Yeah.
make. What do you think kind of makes the most sense? And what is kind of at the top of your list in terms of like what you would love to see happen?
So you said, what do I think is next and what I would love to see happen next? So two different ones.
Just a little bit of, your head versus your heart type of.
My head says that they're going to go address the backup big spot.
Okay.
I don't know with who. I don't think it's Jonas Valanciunas. I think they've kind of like moved on from that. And maybe that's me being optimistic and a little naive. But my head wants me to like my heart. Heart wants me to do. I want them to go get like an athletic guard that can like help take some of the load off of Austin. The guy I keep circling back to is Colin Sexton. That's the guy I keep circling back to. That is pretty low maintenance offensively, but like if you need him to, like I think people kind of have Sexton's abilities kind of flipped, and it's all because of the perception of him being a good defender because of the young bull stuff. And he plays hard. He does play hard, admittedly, but Sexton the past 2 years, really past 3 years, he's a legitimately good shooter.
Yeah.
Like he's taken over, I think 500 attempts the past 3 years. They're shooting 40% from three on those attempts. So he's just legit a good shooter now. He would come in and be their best slasher, not named LeBron James, day one. Even in a down year, he's still at like 4.7 rim attempts per 75 possessions, and Austin's at 3. And Austin's their second best like slasher on the team, not named Braun. So that kind of puts things in perspective. So he immediately be their best slasher. He's a good 3-point shooter. He's a fine enough playmaker, especially when you combine him next to AR and Braun, and they'll do their stuff for AD still. So that's the guy I like have, I don't even know why I'm like the word I'm looking for. But that's the guy I really, really, really want to see LA go get. And my argument is I think athletic guard is more of a pressing need than a backup big, because if AD gets hurt, you're screwed anyway. So like the athletic guard thing is the thing that I think can cost you in a playoff series. Like you face OKC round 2. They're just going to pressure the mess out of AR with all those guys that they can throw at them. And you're turning to Gabe Vincent, or you're turning to, God forbid, we're turning to Max Christie on ball reps, right? So like go get an athletic guard that can take some of the load off, can get to the rim, get to the line too. So that's what I would go with personally.
He's one of the names that I keep kind of going back to just because it's a change of pace that they just simply don't have on that team, where, and especially just in terms of athleticism and rim pressure, there's no one. And like the numbers you just laid out, it's LeBron James, and that's it. And when your best slasher, it's LeBron James, so take it with a grain of salt, but
he's
having him be
today.
40 is not ideal. It's not ideal. How much do you think Sexton would kind of take? Because Utah's notoriously been rather stingy with moving off guys.
I think I would trade a first for Sexton. Anything more than a first feels kind of steep.
Yeah.
But like if money wise, I don't even know what it would take to get there, but it's like Gabe Vincent and you put like 2 minimum contracts or whatever together in a first, like, that's the deal.
Yeah.
Now, same token, I think if that deal was available to a certain extent, I think they probably would have just done it already. or maybe they don't view Sexton the same way I do, but that's probably my price. I'm not going over a first round pick for Colin Sexton, as much as I do like him.
Fair. All right, wrapping up, just kind of big picture with this team. What has just really stood out to you with this Lakers team in general? Whether it's something exciting, concerning, just bizarre, whatever. With this team in the first kind of quarter of the season and going forward, what has stood out to you the most with this Lakers team?
I mean, God forbid this team can be a good offensive and defensive team at the same time.
No, you only get one. You only get one.
So I still don't have like a great pulse on this team. Like my preseason take on them, when I was doing like my power ranking stuff, was that there's like a 1.6% chance this team can win a title, and it's because you have Braun and AD.
Right.
And I honestly don't feel any different than that. The DFS trade helps a lot, I guess. So okay, 1.8%, but there's still like some holes or whatever, and they still haven't like played. They haven't had their stretch yet. Like Memphis has had their stretch where they've looked really good. Dallas even have had their stretch, and that was like when Luka wasn't even all the way like in February shape or February form that we're used to seeing from Luka. And I mean now he's hurt, but they've had their stretch. Even Phoenix, that's I think now like outside of the picture. Phoenix had their like dominant 7 games or whatever when KD was actually healthy, and they were a top 10 offense, a top 10 defense. They were winning close games. Denver, I still just believe has the switch that we just haven't seen yet. So it's hard to put it like compare them to the rest of the teams of the West. They're winning games right now. The Clippers, even they're about to get a top 10 player back, and they've been like legit good. So I guess that's the thing. I don't really know what to think about them because we just haven't seen that stretch where they're playing really good basketball consistently on both ends of the floor. When they are healthy, I still think they can probably beat anybody, but they could also pretty easily be beaten by just about anybody. I think the thing that's concerning, and this kind of goes back to the Dalton take. JJ said he was going to come in and they were going to shoot more threes. I think they're like third lowest in 3-point volume per 100 possessions or whatever. So, and they just happen to trade their highest volume 3-point shooter in D'Lo. So, like, what does that look like? And does that make them even worse offensively? I mean, DFS is going to come in and be a good 3-point shooter, but he's not like the insane volume 3-point shooter like a D'Lo was. So that's where you need like Dalton to kind of increase his opportunities, and that's not even a Dalton thing. It's more of a coaching staff thing. And then again, just going back to the original point, like, can we get a stretch where even if it's a 5-game stretch, because like Dallas only really had a 5-game stretch, Phoenix only had a 5-game stretch where they looked really, really complete, but a 5-game stretch against decent competition, we're like, oh, okay, this is what this team can actually be like when they're playing good on both ends of the floor. And then obviously, we both think they're lined up all right enough to make another trade. So I don't know if that even really answers your question, but that's kind of where I'm at with this team. I don't really know quite yet.
Yeah, no, that kind of feels like the general tone with this team is where it's like, who are they? Like, what is their identity? Because like you mentioned a few times, it's like you got some stretches of awesome defense and non-existent offense, and vice versa. And it feels like this roster is still in flux. Like there's still going to be at least one more move made, and then buyout market, which always gets overhyped. But I'm sure there'll be something. So I think that kind of just general uncertainty makes sense, especially given where, and then you just kind of look at where they are in the standings, and they're I think still the 5th seed. So it's like, all right, well, given how much frustration and uncertainty there has been with this team, they're still in a pretty good spot, especially when you look at Dallas with Luka hurt, and Phoenix, who, their guys get hurt, and Minnesota can't figure out their offense at all. And it's just been a really, really bizarre, tightly kind of competitive Western Conference so far.
Yeah. And I guess that's the other thing. I think the West is very OKC. I think is still in a class of their own in the West. And I mean, I don't know how that's a hot take, but like, God forbid you preach. The amount of times I've like hyped up the Thunder and immediately got slated for it is
that's bizarre.
Pretty bizarre.
They're kind of good.
Yeah.
Like everywhere.
Yeah. It still feels kind of wide open, especially when you factor in like I said, Denver still probably has that switch in them. Dallas at any given moment could have like the best player in the league whenever he wants to be that.
Yeah.
Houston scrappy enough defensively. Memphis is a really good team. So it still, in a sense, feels open. And that's why you got to feel good about them making the trade for DFS. It shows that they're trying to be serious. And you got to feel good about where they're at right now, being 5th, and they have a pretty good schedule in January. They don't leave California until outside of like a back-to-back in Texas. They don't leave California until they take an East Coast trip at the end of the month. So it's the perfect time to start to round in the shape if you're the Lakers.
Sean, this is awesome. Please tell everyone where they can find your stuff and how they can support you one more time.
Yeah, so follow me on Twitter at Sean_DAVI. Talk about all stuff NBA over there, obviously, and then on the Sports Headline Show, Sports Headline Show on YouTube, and the Los Angeles Lakers Network as well for straight Lakers content.
Sean does awesome work. Go support him. Go follow him. You'll be smarter for it. Sean, thank you.
Thanks, Tyler.